Nigeria. We've been joined by two other guests. Ladi Thompson is a security expert. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
And Barrister Wakili Kadima, who is a resident of Southern Kaduna. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen. Mr. Thompson, let me come back to you. Before you came, Mr. Ario was analyzing the entire year in terms of security. He ended with a focus on Boko Haram. But let's look at the different groups that reared their heads. Some didn't begin in 2016, they were there before 2016, but Boko Haram, the IPOB, that's the pro-Biafra people, the militants in the Niger Delta and in the different parts of the Niger Delta, the Shiites. Then you also have the herdsmen that were doing intermittent attacks here and there. Now, in all of that, 5 or 6 basic groups that were causing chaos here and there in the country. What would you say was the situation security-wise in the country based on this?
This is a very interesting one. First of all these groups have been there for ages. What we should be saying is that they came to the limelight in this past few years. Let's take the Shiites, for instance. Zakzaki was in Ahmadu Bello in 1979 was when he went to Iran. Zakzaki has always had run-ins with the military government in those days. And all through what had happened was that they had wisely gone underground. They went underground. However, if any nation was very vigilant, you would notice that they were already building up a potential army. If you lived in Kaduna State or in any of the areas where the Shiites had their enclaves, you'd realize that there's another government in the offing. So there's really, what I want to say is that I think we need to have a change of attitude in the way we think. We need to restructure our thinking patterns. IPOB and all these things, frankly speaking, the moment Boko Haram started and showed that there was a flaw, it showed that Nigeria has a glass jaw. Many other groups that hitherto were not bold enough began to gather the boldness since somebody had introduced a narrative to challenge directly the government. So what we have seen so far is just a tip of the iceberg. There are still many other redentist groups who are talking about their own vision for the future. So it boils down to leadership. What we are seeing here is that this year the leadership came in first of all, marshaled militarily, that was okay, but beyond the military, there needs to be good leadership skills. You have to show a vision. There must be a bonding vision. You must introduce narratives. So right now, because the nation doesn't have any bonding glue, has no narratives, and more importantly, what is causing all these calls, anybody who's studious enough will tell you. I was in Kew Garden studying colonial documents. The Nigeria you're looking at today is a locomotive that has been traveling on rail tracks that was prepared by people who are long dead. Almeric Fitzroy, if I mention some names now, Lord Stanford Ham. What you are seeing us do today was laid down mostly by the British. And what has happened is that the tracks they laid, we've traveled on it. We have now reached the end of the tracks they laid. So we either laid new tracks to go in a new direction, or those who see that we have gotten to the end of the track, looking and say there's no way forward. Everybody now thinks, let's go back. So for IPOB, the boys are looking for the future in the past. It's natural and it's instinctive. When there is no leadership that paints a new picture of what the future should bring, that's where Nigeria is at. And until there's an introduction of a vision, the forces that have been prior to our independence, that had been managed severally, will now continue to rear their heads, looking for a future in the past, in the absence of.
When you talk about looking for a future in the past or in the present without looking forward, what would you say about the herdsmen?
Oh, you go back to 1904. Yeah, you go back to 1904. Now, whether you like it or not, I was here a while ago with a friend of mine, Lehman, who was once a presidential candidate in Nigeria. And he happened to be from Borno State, if you remember very well. And we talked about the fact that there was a Islamic dynasty in Borno State that predated the Fulani's advent into Nigeria by a few hundred years, almost about 400 years, if not more. And that when Usman Danfodio came, and you follow the narrative from how he was able to defeat the Hausa kings and subjugate them, what is happening now is that the Fulanis who formed the core of what exploded then have now since then been looking back wistfully to the days. Ilorin, I think, was taken in 1830 or so. So all these stories have passed from fathers to children and all that, in the absence of an overarching vision that binds people together to conquer the little local visions. Everybody looking for a brighter future is saying, look, why don't we go back to the days when we were on top? So what you see there is just a replay of the conquest dream.
So why does it seem like it's this period that all of this, they're rearing their heads? If you look at the fights against Boko Haram, we are talking about the taking over of Sambisa Forest, but we have these other issues whereby people die almost on a daily basis. Somebody is in his farm and some herdsmen will come and run the place over and kill people. In southern Kaduna, we are talking about, even though there is a curfew, we are talking about people brazenly going into homes to kill people. How can we get out of this? How far have we been able to address these issues this year?
Well, the truth is this. The only way we can address this, there's a common thread in everything you're talking about. I was working on an anti-corruption board, and I said to them, all the definitions of corruption with which foreign nations are trying to help Nigeria cannot help us, because the primary definition of corruption that can help Nigeria actually is the devaluation of human worth. When you devalue human life and life becomes cheap, whatever methodology by which you do it is the worst form of corruption. And out of that corruption comes every other form of corruption. So the truth is this: all across the nation, we are a people who do not have value to human worth. And the moment you don't have value to human worth, the death of a few thousand is a non-issue. In any other country, if you lose 2 citizens to something, the entire country will be up. How can you take 2 people? That's 2 people too many. In Nigeria, you can kill 20,000. Sometimes part of it is what we inherited as a legacy of the brutality of the military era.
But is the government of the day trying to address this? Some people have said, there's not much that is like the government, federal government, let me put it this way, is looking away from these issues, particularly the herdsmen issue.
Well, let me put it in a bit more delicate manner, but in the same, practically the same vein. What we have right now is a leadership that has military skills. But what Nigeria needs right now goes beyond military skills. And for the fact that he ethnically is from the Fulani stock, has worked against him because he's not seen right now to have put down his foot in the way we expect him to put down his foot. So what we're looking at right now is an exploitation. I always keep saying something to Nigeria. Some of the problems going on in Nigeria are not local problems. These are global problems. And the thinkers behind these problems are extremely intelligent people who exploit all loopholes. Now, the, quote, failure of leadership, or the area where there's a weakness in the leadership of the incumbent president right now, is what is being exploited. Ethnically speaking, he's Fulani. Now, the Fulani men are going on rampage. The Fulanis have a myth in Nigeria.
They have said they're not Fulani.
Well, for whatever no matter what the delusions that we choose to, believe in Nigeria, I've been talking to the people from southern Kaduna, and the more I listen to them in southern Kaduna, the more obvious it has become.
Okay, let's go to let me say someone who is at the heart of it. You live in southern Kaduna.
I live in Kafanchan.
Kafanchan.
Yes.
So what's the situation?
The situation has been there. The situation has been very risky for human lives and coexistence. I mean, when government imposes a 12-hour curfew that lasts for over a week, then you can only imagine the scale of suffering in the past 2 weeks since this was done. And it was in the midst of it that the attack on Goska took place. So what we have witnessed in the past 2 weeks has been much more than can be imagined from afar. I have been in Kafanchan all through this period. I've been in the curfew. I was literally sneaked out of the town yesterday into Abuja to take my flight to be here this morning. So it's not a comfortable situation to be in at all, because every day everybody lives fearing what could happen next. Which village would be attacked next? Would there be a conflagration somewhere? And you sleep in the night with one eye closed and another open. And I remember, like in my own home, we go on shifts to sleep because you have to be thoroughly alert, awaiting anything that could just happen. In spite of the fact that the military and security forces presence has done a lot to kind of give people lessen the tension.